But something that we're going to see today is something pertinent to children. And not just children, but also that has a lot of connectivity to the childhood. And as we saw these different other laws also, there's so much that comes out of a child. And what starts with a child goes for a lifetime. So it's very important of what is being instilled within a child from a very young age. And it's really sad that we came up with the law only in 2009, but it has a little history to it. And even before enactment of uh, the 2009 law, there has been certain things that happened in the Indian Constitution. Something that I would encourage you to read is Article 29 and 30, which also are roots for why Article 21A came into being. So, to just give you a brief of why and how this Right to Education Act came into being, something that we should know that this is the 86th amendment that was done to the Indian Constitution. Okay. And so it was inserted by Article 21A, as ma'am has rightly pointed out. It pertains to free and compulsory education for children in age group of 6 to 14. Okay. So normally what we hear these days is that 3 plus push them into school. Yeah, preschooling and all of it's very interesting to also see that there's something about preschooling also spoken about in this act, but that we'll dig into a little later. To just start with, we should know that this also has a base in the Indian Constitution. And because of Article 21A being inserted in 2002, we were blessed with this act or law that speaks of a right to be educated. And I would go back to something that I spoke to you all before about what is a right. A right is something that if you are not given, you can demand for your rights at the appropriate forums. And when it's a constitutional right, you have a remedy to approach the courts and ask them to reinstate your rights. So that powerful is the word called right as far as our Indian Constitution is concerned. So please know that right to compulsory and free education is a fundamental right. It's a basis. It's something that has to be provided, like all the other rights that you've heard of when you studied in your history classes. So this is also a fundamental right for every citizen of our country. And it is something that's very practical that I'm going to tell you, that even these days we see very many children around us not even knowing that it is their right to be educated. And very many parents also do not shoulder the responsibility to give them education because they think it's an expensive issue. And that is why this act actually came into being. And it also brings about so much of good things that can benefit the child, and to also lessen the responsibility upon the parent and increase the responsibility on the side of the government to look into the expenditure that it would cost for children to ensure that they are educated at a very young age. Okay. So having said that, this act brings about free and compulsory education for all children of age 6 to 14 years. So when you say age 6 to age 14, it starts from class 1 to class 8. Okay. Yeah. So what are the concepts that we should know as far as this act is concerned? There are certain concepts that are being spoken of. And as I told you, that the article came into being, and because of the article, this act came into being, and this is in effect from 1st April 2010. So what difference does it make? This is something that you all should also know when you study any law. You should see from when it has an effect from. So that is from when you can start implementing and you can start questioning and you can claim your rights from. Okay. So this is with effect from 1st April 2010. And there is this concept or this word that I told you called free education. There were two words. One was free education, the other one was compulsory education. Now let's see, what is free education? What does that word free education mean? It just means that you should ensure that you give a child education without mentioning that there are costs attached to the education that will be provided. Now, please know that in a society like ours, there are few people who feel that it is an expenditure that cannot be borne. Thereby, they do have earnings, but at the same time, they do not want the child to be educated, because they feel that once you start educating the child, there's a lot of expenditure that adds to it. So to prevent certain thoughts of people where they feel that the fees we will have to pay at the regular basis, there are expenditures for the education that we'll have to bear for the going and coming forth of the child, so on and so forth, and to ensure that they prevent the child because they do not want those expenses to be borne. And this stops the child from getting basic knowledge of education. See, even now we are a platform sitting together and talking all of these subjects to increase the knowledge of what is happening around us, or what is practically possible, what is practically not possible. So the fundamentals, when lost, even if a family migrates or a child goes elsewhere or is lost, maybe the child does not know to read and write, how will the child get to communicate? These thoughts might actually prevent the child from getting the very basic understanding of principles of um, learning, exposure to subjects, and also giving the freedom for the child to choose a skill set. It always need not be um, knowledge based education, it could be also practical education. So stopping a child from growing uh, in any strata, in any forum, in any form, is something that happens when this thought of expenses towards education comes. So to ensure that such thought is being curbed and people are given opportunity to know the different subjects around them and to choose what they want to have their career towards. It could also be skill sets, as I told you. So that is the very reason why free education came into being. So this is something that we need to also create awareness as social work students who are here. I would urge you to create that awareness of how there is absolutely no expenditure, so which might prevent the child from actually learning and coming up in life. Otherwise, the child gets stuck only to the family and what is connected with the family, what the child is exposed to. The child would not know what is happening around her and where could the future of a child go up to, right? So in this free education, there are two beautiful concepts that are also spoken about, which we might not think of. So the law has actually thought of children with disabilities. Why children with disabilities? See, when it's very normal for us to see normal children itself not go to school, it's very challenging for parents who send children who have disabilities for the very reason that they might be bullied, they might be ragged, they might be made fun of, they may not feel inclusive, so on and so forth. But to ensure that all the children get to learn and understand a child with disability and also respect a child with disability, it is a right also for the child who has a disability to be educated at the right time. So please know that this right to education applies to children with a disability also. And if there is a child with multiple disabilities, what tends to happen is that they also have the same right. If they can cope up with the other children, well and good, but they also have a right to opt for home-based education. Now, this is something that is not greatly done in India, but it's just coming up. It's coming up, and this pandemic is also bringing in a lot of home-based education. So please know that home-based education is not uh, just for people of the higher strata of the society, but for anybody who actually desires to see their child with multiple disabilities also come up. So appropriately, the government should ensure that when when a request is being made, that home-based education is provided for the child. Okay, yeah. What next? There are some special provisions for children. For which children? So if you look onto the left, you will see this image of greater than 6. Yeah. So if the child is above 6 years and has not been admitted in any school, what tends to happen is that admission has to be provided for elementary education. So when I say elementary education, if we just go back to the purpose of the act is to ensure that children between the age group of 6 to 14 are put to schooling, right? Or put to education. So elementary education means, as I mentioned previously, it's from class 1 to class 8. Okay. So any child who's not been admitted in school who's above 6 years, that child should be admitted in school. For example, if there is a child, say 8 years and not admitted in school at all, for that particular age group, the child will be admitted in that class. Okay. If the child is say 8 years, then if 6 years is first standard, then 7, 8. So it is the third grade. So the child would be put in standard 3, but the child has not done first standard and second standard. So what is the duty of the government to ensure that special training is given so that this child copes up in par with the other children? Okay. So the child also has a right to receive a special training to ensure that there is the capacity of the child to the knowledge of the other children who are already doing standard 3. Okay. Right. Now, if a child is not being admitted at all or is being admitted for elementary education, the child is entitled for free education. Now, for example, the child, as I have mentioned in the example, the child was 6, 7, 8 years, right? 8 years, supposed to be in third standard, but was not able to do so. But the child is trying to cope up. Now, what happens if the child is not able to cope up? They can recommend the child to be put again in first grade if the child is comfortable and all of that, and the parents are also okay about it, and continue the education of the child. And though the act says till 14 years, even if the child grows above 14 years, say 14, 15, 16, in this example that I gave you, the child will be able to complete the elementary education despite of crossing 14 years. So they will ensure that the total elementary education is completed free of cost, as mentioned to be free education. Okay, right. What next? What if the child is studying in a place and wants to shift schools for any reason? So there has to be a right to transfer to any other school. Okay. So in this, the school has, if the school that is being running has no provision for completion of elementary education, say suddenly something comes up and the school is shut down for reasons, whatever it could be. So what happens to the children there? They have to be admitted in some other school. So they have a right to be transferred to any other school. So for the purpose of transfer, there are certain things that happen. Okay. That I will tell you in a bit. But before that, you should know that if a child is required to move from one school to another, it is not hard and fast rule that they have to give only one particular reason for transfer of the school. It could be any reason. It should not be questioned. If the parent feels that the child will get better education, or if the school is not able to have the capacity to teach the child, or if there's something else that the parents require, if the child is having a disability and they want to have homeschooling, whatever it could be the reason, a right to transfer is a right. It has to be provided. And when they ask for a transfer, there cannot be any kind of a hindrance that is being caused by the officials, who could be the headmaster or the headmaster in charge. Okay. So immediately on request, the headmaster and the in charge of the school should provide a transfer certificate. This is normally called the TC in our parlance. Okay. So the transfer certificate has to be provided. Why do you get a transfer certificate? So that the school where you're getting admitted will know that you studied in that previous school, and till what grade did you study, did you pass, or if did you fail. But with reference to free and compulsory education, as far as the RT is concerned, there is as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned and various other states, they brought about their own understanding of till which class can we promote the children without failing them. Okay. So in one state it was till standard 3, in one state it was till standard 7, in one state it is still standard grade 5, in one state it's still standard 8. So even that is going to be standardized, has been standardized. Okay. That's still till grade 8 that you do not fail any children. So a transfer certificate should be provided. And what happens if there is any hindrance? There could be certain places where they would try to make money out of all of this, or even just to create that harassment to the parent or to the child, where they do not, you know, have a proper reason as to why they're harassing the child. Or there could be very many other reasons as to why transfer certificate could not be provided, some technical grounds, that there is no person available, so on and so forth. So they could give you any or very many reasons. But something that we should know, that the delay in producing the transfer certificate in the new school cannot be a ground for them to say that we will not give an admission. The new school should give you admission and tell you to submit the transfer certificate when you receive it. Okay. So in writing, actually the parent or the guardian can give it in writing, mentioning that we have made an application there, attach that application also as a Xerox, and say that we have applied for a transfer certificate, but there is a delay in getting the transfer certificate, thereby admission may be given. So admission should be given and cannot be denied in the other school. You cannot stop the education of the child for the reason that the transfer certificate is not being provided. And if there are any circumstances, as I mentioned previously, where there could be some foul playing happening or some delay in issuance of the transfer certificate, then disciplinary action will be taken upon the headmaster or the in charge of the school. So this is something that we should know. And all of this uh, does not just apply only to children who are being educated by the state government, but also applies to children who are not educated by the state government. That is to say that the expenditure, even if it's by parents in a private school or something like that, these are norms that are common to all schools. And especially when it comes to children who claim their right over the Right to Education Act, this is even more stronger. So I remember in one of the instances where there was a child from a tribal community who had actually migrated with a parent to a neighboring district and lost 3 years of education. So when the child came back, the child wanted to pursue education. And when the child went back to school, the headmaster said, sorry, you've lost 3 years and you cannot get back to school, which is not acceptable as far as the RTE Act is concerned. So why am I giving you this example is because the child has a right to continue education and complete elementary education despite of the number of years lost, despite of the age being more than 14. So please know that the child cannot be denied right to be educated. And it is actually the parents' duty also. There are duties for the parents as well to ensure that they educate the child. So in all circumstances, all these authorities whom we see around, it could be the headmaster, it could be the local authority, it could be the government, anyone who is aware of circumstances like this should ensure that they provide education despite of all these odds of, say, very many reasons as to why education had stopped, because it matters to the development of the child. And why is it so very important? Because the constitution speaks of education to be, elementary education to be given to children as a right, and at the same time they are the future citizens, and if we are not going to provide the benefit that has to be given for children who love to be educated, we are actually doing a miss. Okay, so please know that it is very important that we ensure that the rights to transfer to any other school is not being stopped for any reasons. Something else that we should know is, as I mentioned in my previous uh, slides, there are some duties that are levied upon certain people. Okay, so first and foremost, we'll see what are the duties levied upon the government. So the government should ensure, and the local authority should ensure, that there are schools being established in places where there are no schools, or there are schools being established in vicinities in and around places where there is a need for more schools to come up. So maybe a primary school that can hold 30 children, that is there, but there are very many children there, they can establish more number of schools. So this is something that is their responsibility and their duty. Now, something that we should also know, that this act came out in 2009. And when it came out itself, it brought about the duty in the act itself to ensure that from the enactment in 2009, that within a period of 3 years, that there should have been schools established in places that there are no schools. So in case you are a person who gets to know that in that particular locality that there are no schools, please cite this. Please ask the appropriate authorities in the local places. They could be the revenue divisional officers or the collectors. Please bring it to their knowledge that a school has to be established. And if it not being established, then the whole purpose of the act does not come into existence. And if required, you can get in touch with the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights and the State Commission for Protection of Child Rights to bring it to their notice, to say that there is no school here where there are so many children and there is a need for a school. Now, why is it so very important that in places, in vicinities where there are no schools, that schools needs to be established? One, to ensure that children study. Two, to also ensure that children don't travel long distances, and ensure that their travel is safe. Even if it's, say, 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, that it is safe for the child to go to school and come back. And in most of the villages, we also learn, and we are also aware of the fact that mostly girl children are not allowed beyond a particular age, for the very reason that protection matters, and they do not complete their elementary education. Also, some do, some do not. So it just depends upon uh, the the time frame that it takes to reach the school, and the amount of protection that comes along with it. So please know that if you find circumstances like these that are raised either by the public or either noticed by you, it can be brought to the knowledge of the officials, and ensured that schools are being established in places like these. Okay, so please know that there are certain uh, specifics for the central government and the state government to look into. One, for all of these to be established. As we all know, education is now more business rather than what to say, service oriented, right? So something that involves, and why do we call it a business now, is because of funds. And it is the duty of the state government and the central government to ensure that appropriate amount of funds are being provided for not only the establishment of the school, but to also ensure that the school is being maintained and there is appropriate maintenance of the school, running of the school, and also ensuring that the development of the school is also being done. So for all of this, yes, funds is required. So it is a duty of the state government to actually uh, provide funds for all of this. So in case if you see that there is no development of a school that is being established by the state government or the central government, please also bring it to the knowledge of the authorities, and that will be addressed. And something to also know is that with reference to curriculum, the central government has a responsibility to develop a national curriculum. Okay, this is to help the academic authority who are specified under section 29. And when I walk you through section 29, I'll give you a just and a brief of it. Okay, so as of now, something that you should know is that they have to not bring about a syllabus, but to create a framework of what is the content that has to be taught during this time of an elementary education. What are the basics that have to go into a child? Okay, and something that we should also know that it is not just the school, the infrastructure, and the child to be admitted. It is also the quality of education that the Right to Education Act looks into. So the standard of training teachers and ensuring that the standard is being maintained is something that is also the duty of the government. So anywhere we find, we hear, we get to know, or even if we are undergoing this, also when I say we, it is any citizen of this country, yeah, gets to know that there are teachers who are not performing their duties appropriately or are being inefficient at some point of time, it has to be brought to the knowledge and it has to be addressed. Developing and enforcing the standards of quality teachers is something that's very important, and that is the duty of the government as well. Please also know that when can you maintain the standard of the teachers? Now, olden times are different, new times are different, and now when it's a pandemic, and I know quite a few teachers who are very elderly people, and they ask for help of people who are there inside the houses to get the internet connected, to help them project the PPT, to go turn on the mic, to turn off the mic, so on and so forth. So there has to be some kind of a growth in every person as time comes, right? So what I knew when I was a student is very little, and what I know now is a little more. No one is accomplished in education in any field. We are learners, okay, and we learn until the end, until we breathe our last. There is something for us to learn always. So similarly, it is very important that all these teachers and people who are involved into bringing skill education, or also people who are involved in looking to the well-being of the mental health of the child, are people who have to be provided appropriate technical support. They have to be taught of the new trends that are coming up. It's nice to see videos, right, these days, where teachers teach math so easily in a very innovative way. That would actually have changed the life of some child who does not like maths, even science. Okay, so people who feel these subjects are very hard, now when you look back and see, had these techniques been there previously, would have actually helped the child develop more. So it is very important to ensure that we not only maintain the standards of the teachers, but also increase their knowledge and develop them in the recent trends. Okay, so all of these are actually duties of the central government. Okay, and it's also a duty of the state government, not only just the duty of the central government. It is a mutual duty. What else? We saw this word called free education, right? So now we got to see this word called compulsory education. Now, what is compulsory education, and what does it mean? It means that a child is obligated to be educated by the appropriate government. It is a duty of the government, the parent, to ensure that a child is being educated. Now, what we are seeing is only the duty of the government. We will go to see the duty of the parent as well. Okay. So it is an obligation. You have to ensure that every child in your country is being educated. And it is something that we should also garner to see how many children around us are not having or have not completed their elementary education, and what best can be done. Um, Even the government is striving to see how they can accomplish this act. And as citizens, I think we also have a duty to see how we can bring innovative ways and means to encourage children or encourage parents to ensure that elementary education is given. Yeah. So it's an obligation for the government to do what? To provide free and elementary education to every child of age 6 to age 14. Okay. And what also is their obligation? You should ensure that compulsory admission is being given, that attendance is being looked into, that you keep a watch. If you remember this act of child labor and all that we saw, um, in the recent past, there have been discussions with the government and school officials and all. So we asked the um, teachers, the headmasters, the teachers to keep a check on where are these children who are missing out of school. They'll be enrolled, their name will be there, but they will not be turning into school. Okay. So if they're not turning into school, had they migrated or had they stopped education for obvious reasons, had they put to child marriage is also an act that I hope you guys are looking into. So all of these are interconnected. You cannot separate anything. And something that we should know is that unless and until we get to proper implementation, not everything will fall in place. Okay. So please know that it is the obligation of the government. So who will inform the government? The teachers, people who are social workers working in that area. Just go pay a visit and ask how many children have come to school, how many have not. What is the attendance like? Are they missing children? Are they children who are being trafficked? Are they children who have been put to child marriage? What is happening to those children who are not coming to school? I just leave this question with you. And how many of them are actually completing elementary education? How many are not? How many are being uh, told that beyond this age, you've lost 3 years, you've lost 1 year, we cannot put you back in that class and continue your education? How many of them are denied this? How many of the headmasters themselves know that the child has a right to complete that elementary education? Please bring this out in the awareness that you can in the different forums that you can as well. So please know that when we say every child, it's for every child from the age of 6 to 14. And as I said previously, that if there are these dropout kind of instances happening, or they've not been given uh, the the chance to be admitted in schools, and they are admitted late, there is always this timeline that can be increased for the benefit of the child. Yeah, right. Please ensure that the government has to ensure that there is an availability of school in every area. So this is something that I already spoke to you all and I told you all. And if there are children who belong to the weaker section, that is where the focus should be in greater amounts, because that is where parents will not send them to schools for the very reason that it is very expensive, right? So please ensure that if a child is belonging to a weaker section or a disadvantaged group or is being discriminated in that area, and that are the reasons for them to be prevented from coming to school, that should be broken, and that is the duty of the government. So when I say duty of the government, does not just rest on the government, also it also rests on us who get to see or get to know about instances like this and bring it to the notice of the appropriate government officials. What else is the duty of the government? To provide infrastructure. This is something that we spoke of, and we spoke about the funding that they have to give to bring about infrastructure, school building, to pay the teaching staff, to increase the capacity of the teaching staff, to bring about learning equipments, so on and so forth. And yeah, special training facility. This special training facility could be for children. There is also special training facility for teachers that have to be provided to ensure and monitor admission, attendance, and completion of elementary education. So this is something that we saw in a discussion in few slides earlier, but this is a written down duty of the government. So what I'm telling you now is hard on them and has to be followed. Okay, right. To ensure good quality elementary education, as we had a discussion about how teachers need to be developed in their skills to ensure that they provide good education to these children. And there is a schedule that actually has uh, norms that are being specified, what needs to be done. Okay, next. You should ensure that you update your curriculum to the basis of what is the content in the learning processes. For example, if you go back to see a book of the government, there is some development that happens every year. It's not the same content. Maybe for 1 year, 2 years, they continue, and then there is a revision, a relook into it to teach the child what is happening, that needs to be updated, and to also ensure that we do not stick to the old patterns of education, right? And make it more innovative to look at. Maybe when we were children, when we looked into books that did not have images, it was fine. But now people expect that there has to be some kind of a upgradation. When you see, when you talk about tsunami, there has to be a picture of tsunami to make you understand, okay, this is how it might look like. Or if you talk about a cockroach or dissecting a cockroach, they might want a picture of a cockroach to make you understand that this is how the dissection of a cockroach is being done. So what is expected these days is very practical education, and that is why most of the parents are unable to answer questions that children ask. So depending upon the timeline, you would have actually seen the statement coming out of people calling generation gap, right? So even in the educational curriculum, even in the study curriculum, there has to be an upgradation time and again, and that has to be at appropriate intervals so that we do not miss out on things that need to be communicated to a child, right? Training facility for teachers is something that we already saw. So I'm just jumping to the duties of the local authorities. So they should ensure that they provide free and compulsory education for every child. So it is almost similar, but something that is a little extra for the local authorities because they are there in that vicinity. So who is your first go-to person when you see there is a need, when you don't see schools, when you see that there is some discrimination because of why these children are not attending schools? If you see or get to know that records of children who are there in the attendance do not attend schools, or there is a place that requires another building or an infrastructure for children to come and study, please ensure that the first go-to person will be the local authority because they are there in the neighborhood. If you do not see any improvement after informing them in a matter of, legally we take 15 days when we communicate a notice to people, but it's just appropriate with reference to time to see if there is an improvement from the time that you inform the local authority. And I would always suggest that anybody informing any of the authorities, please make it in writing and send it by post, uh, mostly with an acknowledgement due card or with a speed post, so that you get to know that your complaint is gone and you have an official record for having sent a complaint or a information towards the same. In these cases, let's not call it a complaint, let's call it information, because it's a development of our own society. Yeah. What else? Infrastructure, the same. Providing increase in training is also there. Something that the local authority should look for is ensure admission for children of migrant families. So as I mentioned, that we look for the attendance of children who are enrolled in our locality. Example, locality A. Okay. And the child is enrolled and does not turn in. That is one data point. The next data point is where you find children come from different other places, accompanied by parents who migrate and come for working at construction sites or at a cottage industry or something like that. They are also people who have to be monitored and looked at and ensure that the children are put to education. Previously, it was called the Sarva Siksha Abhiyan. Now it's presently called the Samagra Siksha Abhiyan. So please ensure that education of children is something that's looked upon by the central government and the state government and has the responsibilities of everybody. So they should ensure admission of children of migrant families. And if language is a hindrance, the government will also look in to bring in teachers who know the appropriate language so that the education continues without any hindrance. Okay. And this is happening in very many work sites. So please know that it is something just not written in paper, but we have people who know Odia, who know Marathi, who know Kannada, who actually teach these children in their own home language, though they are migrated. So something that we should know, that just establishing schools, having a classroom, having an infrastructure is not sufficient. You should know and also keep a tab on, if you're a local authority in the future, if you're say the president of that particular village or whatever, please know that you should keep a tab on the functioning of the school and how well it is functioning. Yeah. And also the local authority has a say into the academic calendar. So please know that if you're a local authority in the future, this is for all the students who are listening to me, or even people from a different fraternity who urge to become local authorities, please know that you have a say into the matter, and you have a very powerful voice into ensuring that this act is being implemented, and please do so. Now, what is the duty of every parent? Every parent or guardian. So some who do not have a parent but is living under a guardian should ensure that they admit the child in the school. Even if they get to know later, as the law permits, that they could be put at a very later stage and ensure that elementary education is given, it has to be complete. Okay. In cases where they feel that, okay, immediately there's no school in the neighborhood, they have to ensure that where next, maybe in the next village, there is a school that has already been established and running. So it is a duty of the parent to ensure that come what may, that they put their child to elementary education and complete their elementary education. Okay. As far as preschool education is concerned, this is what I spoke about. We spoke about children from the age of 6 to 14, that is, say, from standard 1 to standard 8, right? Now, we have heard this in our cities, in our places, in the recent times. This preschool education has become a very hot topic, that once a child is born, child enters 3 years, don't wait. Ensure that the child is put to preschool education. So play school is different, preschool is different. The KG, the LKG, UKG that you've heard of, That is preschool education. Now, once the child is born, you put the child in a play school. So I don't know if the RTE might come up with an amendment to speak of play school, but as far as preschool education is concerned, there is something that the Act has to speak about. This is to prepare the child to ensure that they get into the elementary education, and also it's a preparatory stage for elementary education. So as you know, what you study in LKG is all the ABCDs, and from the first grade you start learning and reading complex things of what you learned in your preschool stage. So this is also something that is a matter of concern from the age of 3 to the age of 6. Okay, to ensure that early childhood is being given along with education before 6 years. Something that you should also know, that the Act speaks of, come what may, no capitation. No capitation, no screening procedure. So it's not like these other schools that maybe we have heard of, where you say, sorry, capitation has to be given. Without capitation, we can't take the child. So sometimes they ask for building funds, sometimes they ask for development of the school. So all of this cannot be asked for from the standpoint of the Right to Education Act. So any child who is claiming education from the standpoint of seeking the government for free education as a right, no screening procedure, come what may, no capitation, come what may, as far as elementary school is concerned. So if you are someone who's thinking, then why are they asking all of this in private schools? In private schools and schools where parents can afford to pay, it is different. This Act actually is for parents, is for children who have constraints in getting to access education. It is free for those children who really want to pursue education and break the norms of discrimination, break the norms of financial expenditure that they cannot pay. Okay, I'm making that very clear for you now. Please also know that there are responsibilities levied upon the schools and the teachers also to ensure that free and compulsory education is being provided. And in that, there is something of a proportion of children who need to be admitted. So just like that, they cannot have a great number and unable to manage. Okay, so to such proportion, they can provide free and compulsory education where there is an accruing aid, that annual recurring aid that can be brought for the benefit of these people, subject to 25%. So depending upon the capacity of the proportion that is decided upon by the schools and the teachers, that is manageable, that is what that they can take in. So that is why I said that where there is a need for another school, that needs to be provided, or if the child feels, when we saw transfer, if the child feels that there is no place for the child to get educated, the child can ask for a TC and go get admitted in another school as well. Okay, and another school close by. But in circumstances where you see more number of children, then it's an alarm that another school has to be established, or an infrastructure has to be established for education there. Okay, and something that we should know is about when a child is being admitted, what do you see as important to say if the child is between 6 to 14 years? So what is the proof of age of admission? Please know that the birth certificate is one, and in case if there's lack of birth certificate, and they go to a particular headmaster, and headmaster cannot deny admission. Okay, what can happen is that they can approach the district legal services. This is something that you will not find what I'm telling you in the Act. They can approach the district legal services and mention that they've been having challenges in getting admission because of proof of age. So thereby, the district legal services will help you out with an application before the court and ensure that you get a birth certificate in case if you don't get a birth certificate at any given point of time from the government. Okay. So no denial of admission. Something that we should know is that a child should be admitted in any school, be it at the beginning of the academic year or at any given point of time. If the child is coming, say, halfway the academic year, the child may be permitted to continue and cope up with what is being taught in the previous segment by a special training. Okay. And please know that physical punishment and mental harassment to the child is prohibited. And when I say prohibited, it should not be done. And if done, it has disciplinary action upon the teachers or the faculty or headmaster, or could be the driver, or could be the watchman, whatever it could be. Physical punishment, mental harassment of the child is prohibited. And this is also something that applies to other schools as well. So also know that there cannot be a school that can run without a certificate of recognition. So there has to be a certificate of recognition that it is owned or controlled by the appropriate government or the local authority, or how it's functioning. All of that should be there. So you cannot say that I'm doing free of cost education and run like a tuition center and say I'm providing free education. See, even if you call it that way, it has to be an established school, right? You have to ensure that after the child finishes the elementary education, to pursue education on higher studies, whatever it could be, it has to be a school which has a recognition. So without recognition, there cannot be a school that will function. And if there is any place that says that we are giving free education and ensuring that we develop and implement the Right to Education Act, that is not permissible. And if that is being contravened, that has a punishment that comes along with it. Okay. And the person who's running the school will have to pay a fine, and also there could be very many other orders that could be passed. Okay. There are certain norms and standards for the school that has to be followed. Please ensure that if the norms and standards are not being maintained, like I told you, if just the infrastructure is there, there are less number of teachers, and there's no proper teaching that's happening. That is also something that is wrong as far as the RTE Act is concerned. It is a mandate that the standards of the school is being maintained, and the recognition is being, if there's a issue about the recognition later, or if there's some claim that is being made by the people in the vicinity, all of that has to be addressed, and that cannot be a reason as to why recognition or norms and standards of the school is not being maintained. Please know that every school should have a management committee, which will have the local authorities, which will have parents and guardians in it. So if you remember, there is parent-teacher meeting, like, okay, where you have the local authorities, where you have the parents or guardians of the children who will be there. So there will be at least 3/4 members of the committee should be parents, where they talk about how the monitoring of the school is happening, recommend things, come up with a development plan, come up with what is required, so on and so forth. And in case if there is something that they can also write, this committee can also write to the government of what needs to be done for a development even in the curriculum. Okay, to that extent, this management committee has vast powers to really understand the needs of the children and bring up changes appropriately. There are qualifications for the appointment and terms and conditions for the service of teachers. So all of this also includes, just because they come with a qualification doesn't mean that they do not require training or upgradation, that has also to be done at timely manners. Okay, so please know that there are certain duties that are levied upon the teachers as well, and for redressal of grievances. So what happens is that they coming in and going out, punctuality in attending school matters. It's not only of the children, but the teachers also should ensure that they should ensure that regularity and punctuality in attending school happens. This is also connected to the various other laws that I mentioned to you. This doesn't stand single, and this helps in implementation and execution of other laws as well. So please also know that it is a duty to ensure that they complete the curriculum in the appropriate time, and do not create a backlog or extend things. So now if you actually see, because of corona, it's been told that all the teachers should continue to communicate to children despite of the present scenario. So come what the scenario, whatever has to be communicated to the children, even in circumstances of a pandemic, it is happening. So it is also for this act, where they should ensure that they perform their duties in the right way. And in case if they do not perform their duties, it becomes a grievance that is due to be addressed. Okay, so please know that they cannot say it's free education, these children don't come properly, that is why we do not finish the curriculum. All these cannot be accepted as reasons. Whatever is the curriculum has to be given. And in case if there are special children who come, as we saw, children with disabilities and all, appropriate teachers who can handle children with disabilities have to handle classes for them. And if there is a huge challenge where they aren't able to communicate to the child that has a disability, and regular meetings have to be conducted by the teachers with the parents to ensure that the development of the child is spoken of. And just because the parents are parents who are uneducated, it cannot be said that they don't understand what the child is doing and all of that. There has to be regular meetings with the parents, and they should also communicate about the development of the child. Yeah, so please also know that in case if there is a default in their performance in all of their duties, that disciplinary action will be taken, and if there are any grievances, it will be redressed appropriately. There is an amount of a pupil teacher ratio, as we already spoke about, that it has to be balanced, and if it is not balanced, then it also targets towards the maintenance of the standards and the norms as prescribed. So please know that while the teacher is also ensuring that she's a part of providing education through the government, this teacher cannot engage herself or himself in private tuitions or in private teaching activity. But there are circumstances that have been raised where to cope up, as I told you, if they join in grade 6 and have not done grade 5, special coaching can be given. So that can be given by these teachers. Okay, that will not fall under the purview of private tuition or private teaching activity. But if there's private tuition or private teaching activity, that is prohibited by this act. And if they are using these teachers for non-educational purposes, that is also prohibited. Okay, and appropriately, as known in all schools, you should fill up the vacancies of teachers to ensure that the ratio is being maintained. So please know that as far as monitoring the child's education or children's education, be it the curriculum, be it how things are functioning, all of it, as I previously told you about the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights and the State Commission of Protection of Child Rights. These are two bodies. At the state, we have the SCPCR here, right in Taylor's Road. If you all know Taylor's Road, it's just there in that signal. So you need not go internally also. It's just right there on the main road. So they're functioning very greatly. So please reach out to them. Even if you feel that you do not wish to go meet the local authority and tell them, or you do not wish to write to the government with reference to it, you can make a reference to the SEPCR, the state, Tamil Nadu State Commission for Protection of Child Rights, or any other state commission. Every state has a state commission for protection of child rights. So if you feel that they are not responding properly, obviously you can take it up to the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. But we have a very functional, very vibrant State Commission for Protection of Child Rights. So please take it up to them, and they will do an inspection. Their team will go, they will look in for an inspection and see what needs to be done, what are the issues that are happening, and how it ought to be addressed also. Okay. So they will also give recommendations to the state government to see what needs to be done to increase the performance of this particular act, and to also ensure that there are no issues that arise out of a lacuna that is there in the particular vicinity. Please also know that there is advisory council, a national advisory council at the central government, and there is also a state advisory council at the state level. And please also know that anybody who is actually, as I said, if we get to know about it, we can write, we can tell them, so on and so forth. If when we are doing it with good intention, we cannot have a suit filed against us. So it's very simple. Some people think, Vanda namakku edukku, this will actually create a lot of problems. Why should we be involved into this and all of that? Please know that that we should not stop ourselves like that. And in every law, this is not just this law, in every law, any person who acts in good faith with good intention, acting in good faith means acting with the good intention for the benefit of the person who is being affected, and for also for the benefit of the implementation of the act, and also for the people who will be benefited out of the implementation. If you act in good faith, there is always protection that comes along with it. And please know that there has been amendment even in 2017. So time and again, there are developments that are done in the Right to Education Act for the very reason that we should strive to see that it is being implemented in the right way, in the spirit of what it is. The reason why this came up is to see every child in India complete elementary education. Every person in India say that at least I've completed elementary education, and that has to be a must, kind of. And that will also ensure that the brain development of the child and the exposure of the child increases for the benefit of its future. So let's see how best we can create awareness about this law. Let's see how best we can see, and also maybe in the future we will say that we are a country that has every child who's being educated. And we are lucky to have a neighboring state that has the highest literacy, and hopefully we will also win that race, and eventually it will be the whole country that implements this in the spirit of the in the actual spirit of why this law came into being.